Hello, I'm Dr. Gurung. I'm a consultant psychiatrist. One of my hobby is to read a book, and this week I have finished this lovely book, The Art of Spending Money. This book is written by Morgan Housel, and this is the second edition of the book that I've read. The first book, which I found it very interesting, was Psychology of Money, which I have read almost 3 years ago. A lot of things have changed. Um, I found this book quite interesting because it helps to explore the psychology of our human mind. What are the things that is taken into consideration when we deal with money and finance? So, just to keep it very short and simple, just want to summarize this book by 3 points, which I found it quite interesting. When I read this book, I got a clarity and understood the difference between being rich and healthy. Being rich means having a lot of money in the bank, able to spend and purchase the things of your desire. But if you have to take a meaning of a wealth, wealth is slightly different. So in this book, they define wealth is if you're wealthy, you have the level of control over what the money does to your personality, your freedom, your desire, ambitious, moral, friendship, and mental health. So wealth, it takes into broader sense. So to be wealthy, it's not necessary that you need to have a million and billion pounds or dollars in your bank. Being wealthy is having the basic, control over your life. Um, so when I analyze my own life, I would say that I would prefer to be wealthy than rich. In this, they have also given some of the ways that you can keep yourself wealthy for your life. So some of the points which I found it quite interesting was just to spend less than your income, believe on the power of compounding, that just try to save it for a longer duration of time. You need to be aware how to use the money. You need to use the money, not the other way around, the money uses you. Being wealthy also means to have some independence. Having wealth also means to have good mental and physical health. So, these are some of the skills that when I reflected back, I also need to practice. Now, moving to the second concept, which I found it very interesting in this book, is when we are dealing with spending money or finance, if you look from the psychological point of view, it's a dopamine and the anticipation of getting something and the excitement make us spend money. A lot of the people says that to have money, we need to be aware of what makes us happy to spend the money. So the happiness, the definition of happiness is basically the difference between there's a gap between expectation and the current circumstances. That creates the overall happiness. So in order to know what happiness means, we as a human being, we also need to be aware of our internal focus as well as external focus. Internal focus is we need to know ourselves, what are the things that excites us. If you consider the external means the societal norms and the expectation. So when we are thinking of managing the money, we need to be aware of both the things and to know what excites us and what makes us tick while dealing with money. Now, the third concept, which I found quite interesting, is we also need to be aware that while dealing with the money, our identity is also very important. Like while reading this book, I was also watching some of the documentaries, and recently I was looking at the documentary from Floyd Mayweather. He has got a lot of money, but he was not able to manage the money. He considered himself as a money Mayweather, and money is an integral part of him. So he tries to flaunt and display on that. So if you analyze this, that sometimes the identity, or it's also called as a social depth, might also make people poor. This is also evident in people winning a lottery. So in order to manage the money, first of all, we also need to have the character in order to control the money. If you're not able to control these things of generation wealth without any hard work, then there's a life cycle of greed which can exploit our feeling and make us eventually lose everything. I've in this book, they have also discussed some of the cases where rich people lost everything, and they also came to the stage of committing suicide. So overall, in this book, what I've summarized is in the 3 points. Number one, in my own personal life, now I need to be reflective of the difference between rich and wealth, and I would prefer to be wealthy. Okay, number two is I need to be aware of my happiness. When defining the happiness, it also depends on I need to experiment as many things as possible to know what my happiness lies. While exploring that, I also need to be aware of risk and regret. Also aware of my timeline, because we don't live forever. So we also need to be aware of not saving to the end and not spending. And while analyzing this, we also need to be aware that there's no any fixed rule of how to spend the money. It depends on individual need. Now, the third thing is we also need to be aware not to attach our identity too much to the money. Also, be aware of social debt and society's expectations. At the end of while analyzing this book, I just want to say that um, this book doesn't say anything hi-fi that what we expect beyond our own understanding. But reading this book, I've realized that it's a high time for me to reflect on my own spending and money and to be mindful. Thank you.